How to make an introduction. Hey, I'm Donnie Bovine, the CEO and founder of Success Champions Networking and author of Endless Stream of Referrals. This is Growth Mode, a podcast all about growing and scaling your business. Hanging out with me as always is Kevin Snow, the sales automation tactician and genius. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how to make an introduction to somebody. So early in my networking game, like when I first understood and got the idea of networking, I really approached it the wrong way. I treated networking as a complete sales prospecting move. Like the people that I was talking to were people I should be selling to. And in doing that really on, I unintentionally burned a lot of bridges because I wasn't going in and building relationships. I was legit trying to prospect to the people at the events, in the groups and everything else, which means I was just trying to sell them my shit. And people didn't want to be sold in that way. And it took me a little while to wrap my head around how to handle that properly. And I stumbled into the idea of opening doors for other people completely by happenstance. It wasn't, something I did purposely, but for some reason, somebody just made an introduction for me to meet somebody else that led to some awesome conversations. And the following week, I made an introduction back to that person. It wasn't a referral, but an actual introduction back to that person for somebody who I thought they should meet. And the excitement that they got from getting into a really cool conversation with somebody that opened a whole lot of doors for them was really cool. And I kind of got jazzed about the whole idea of making these introductions. And I think, a lot of what we're going to talk about in this episode is why you should do introductions, how to do introductions, and how you shouldn't do introductions. So, Kevin, how do you want to start this one off?
Well, I think it's really important for people to understand there's different types of introductions that you can make.
For sure.
And depending on the purpose of the introduction is going to really kind of gear how you need to actually, what the mechanics of that introduction are. If I'm just introducing someone because I think they can have a really great conversation and potentially collaborate on something, it's going to be a completely different than if I'm introducing someone to a referral where they're expecting to have a sales conversation with that person. So I think you can't have a one size fits all process. You need to be aware of what you're doing.
I don't want to skim over that thing, just so people understand. There's introductions and then there's referrals. Introductions, in general, Kevin meet Bob, go have a great conversation. Referral, Kevin meet Bob. Kevin, by the way, Bob is looking for your services. He's really excited to talk to you. There's a sales conversation expected. Okay, so just know that for the most part, we're going to focus a lot heavily on the introduction side of things, but I wanted to make sure we didn't skip over that. Continue on, sir.
No, I think that's right. A lot of people will do really just the hey, Kevin, you need to go talk to so and so, but not give me any of the details. I obviously, for those of you that have been listening, I'm a high C. I like details. I want to know what's going on because then I can plan. And I know what I'm getting into. So,
okay, I so let's talk about that one because I don't want the fucking details.
I know, and it doesn't need to be like a 5-page email list of details, but I need to know is this a, hey, Kevin, meet Donnie. I think you're both vets. I think you guys have a really cool conversation about business and veteran stuff. Awesome. Sweet. Now I know what I'm going into a conversation to versus, hey, Kevin, Donnie broke his email and he needs someone to help him.
Now, so that's the difference between an introduction and referral. If it's a legitimate referral, you're going to get details. Hey, Kevin, so-and-so fucked up their sales automation. They screwed up their email, whatever else. I told them all about you. They're really looking forward to that conversation, right? That's a referral. For me, an introduction is, dude, go fucking have a great conversation. Both you guys know me. Both you gals know me, whatever. And you should have a phenomenal conversation. And, but I will also say to Kevin's point, I've built that reputation around that if I'm making the introduction, you're going to take the fucking meeting. to where some people may not have built that clout yet and need the more details in there.
Yeah, and I think that's important to have that expectation with the people that you're introducing to other people as well. I have friends that have asked me to make introductions for them. So I'm like, yeah, totally, I can do this. But then they didn't take the call. I'm like, I'm not going to make introductions to people if you aren't going to take the call, because you're impacting my ability to do that for other people, and people to take me seriously. And I've cut them off.
Right.
They have to understand, hey, if I'm going to make an introduction, you want to talk to this person about whatever, sweet, I'll do it. But you need to, when they call you, you need to say, awesome, when can we meet?
Yeah, for sure. I think that introductions are oftentimes downplayed too much because God, I can go back to so many amazing business relationships and clients and everything else that I got on the back of an introduction and not a referral. And no, don't get me wrong, guys. Referrals are brilliant. When somebody is proactively looking for your service and somebody puts your name up, it's huge. Because they're basically vouching, saying, "Hey, this is a stand-up guy." And this is who I think you should talk to about whatever service you're looking for. I mean, that's monster. It's like, going to Amazon and purchasing something based on having 20,000 5-star reviews. I mean, it's that kind of clout when you're doing it. Introductions, oftentimes it's just about getting two badass people together and people that are likely to have synergies. Maybe they can partner up on, different clients or deals, or maybe they can, collaborate on, an upcoming events or the likes, or, maybe they just have similar client bases that they can open doors for each other. Introductions just for me are oftentimes almost more important than referrals because of the long tail back end of where an introduction can, move somebody over the lifetime.
Well, and a lot of times introductions I think are easier to make.
I agree. That I
It's
100%
not
agree.
it is not as big of a commitment for that person that you're introducing to have a collaborative meeting as opposed to getting them to say, yes, I want to talk to this person and potentially buy their stuff. Plus, for a lot of people, it's easier to make those connections. For what I do outside of Success Champions with the digital marketing, email marketing, automation, all that stuff, there's not a lot of people who have those types of conversations with their clients. You have to be someone in that marketing world or business development world to ask the right questions and to have it be an authentic conversation. If my HVAC guy goes up and starts talking to one of his business clients about how they're doing email marketing and automation, it's not going to come across right. So, I've trained a lot of my referral partners and people that really get into what I do just to make introductions and to find me potential referral partners that I can collaborate with on different stuff. And it's a much easier conversation for people to get into, and because it's much more broad. It's much more, you can ask questions where you're just really learning about how they run their business and trying to make introductions to people that can help them do it better, as opposed to trying to figure out where their pains are and then trying to fix them with a referral.
Right. I'm curious for you. Did you learn this level of introductions? Because you do it a lot as well. I mean, did you learn this, or was this like something that when you got into networking and people that became natural to you?
So I learned it, and it was out of necessity, almost, because I was getting frustrated about the number of referrals I was getting, because what I did wasn't something people talked about all the time.
So you weren't
I
getting
at the
any
time,
referrals.
yeah, I wasn't getting the number of referrals I wanted, because my product at the time wasn't a common. People didn't go into their clients and talk about managed service and IT. It was just not a common conversation. So I had to figure out how to get in front of the people that could have those conversations. So it was totally a learned thing for me to figure out, all right, so you can't introduce me to clients. How do I get you to introduce me to people who know issues are going on? And it really started coming about then figuring out, all right, so who knows the trigger events are going on in my prospects world? and who are my referral partners and who do I need to have in my stable to be able to consistently pass me referrals.
That's interesting because I kind of went through the same thing because I was in commercial printing when I first got in it, and the same thing. The people weren't just having printing conversations. Where do you get your business cards and crap like that? Even though I
Yeah.
needed a lot bigger introduction, so I also had to find the people. But flip the script. When did you learn to start making introductions for others? Is that something that came natural, or is that something you
Oh
had to
God,
learn?
no. I was totally like you. I'd go to networking events and trade shows and all these things as a sales guy, and I would totally be working the crowd for prospects. It would.
Right.
It was
I just
all
wanted
about
everybody to
me.
hear that this is learned, right?
Yeah.
We were born more salespeople than we were freaking learn how to network right.
Oh God, yeah. I was. It was totally about me in conversations and trying to pitch my thing and get them to take a call from me after the event. And I had to figure out that it was much more effective to ask tons of questions and get them talking about their stuff and make them feel really cool about what they did, and then make some cool introductions that allowed me to follow up with them, and then get in front of them again to do a virtual coffee. At that point, it was actually in person coffee,
Mhm.
and then talk about what I did and figure out how either could we work together or is this something I could do for you guys, that type of conversation. But no, at the beginning, I was a total sales asshole.
I think in some days you still are, but
Get me on the right day and I will flip that switch.
so yeah, I'm honestly really fascinated with your journey on this, and mainly because peopling early on wasn't a big thing for you either. So not only did you have to learn how to get in these conversations, you had to learn to start looking at them and having a lot deeper level conversation. It wasn't about you trying to sell your crap. What was that experience like being able to dive into somebody else's world? Because I know that shit didn't come natural for you.
Well, and I think I started making the adjustment in networking the same time I was making the adjustment in how I sold
Mm,
for Nextel and
that's fat.
learning about all right. So I stopped doing the pitch deck and I threw
Yep.
out the 3 ring binder. And I think that's when I started changing how I networked at the same time. So I think it was really kind of, oh, this is working really well here. And then just, and I think for part of it was also I wasn't nearly as desperate for business
Mm,
anymore because I'd figured out how to sell. I could go in and just not be, I didn't have commission breath anymore at networking events. I could go in and just have conversations and not be trying to find my next big deal so that I could make
right.
quota. I
Right.
think when you talk to salespeople at a lot of social events, at networking events, they're all trying to fill their pipeline,
Yep.
and they need that next deal, and they have. We've talked about this before. They have the close in their head. They are just trying to get to yes. They're not trying to have the conversation with an outcome. And when you make that shift, that's when the networking gets really fun
Yeah.
because now you're just having really cool conversations and figuring out next steps.
Yeah, it was fun. To that point, I had a conversation on LinkedIn, like I often do, and had somebody that, I said, if you go to an event, you better have an objective. And for me, most times, if I'm going to an event, I'm going to walk away with 2 appointments set. And now that doesn't mean I'm going to sell somebody something. That means we're going to dive into each other's world. I'm going to learn more about you. You're going to learn about more about me. But my goal of every one of going to an event is to get a 2 appointment set. And I was talking about this thought process on LinkedIn, and somebody said, there's more to networking than trying to sell people. And I replied, that nowhere did I state that I was trying to sell something, that I was going to walk away with 2 appointments. And those appointments may be with a circle of influence, they may be with a potential prospect, but I don't know shit until I can sit down with them and understand their world. But I asked this person, in particular, if you had a salesperson working for you, how would you know that their networking was successful? What are your markers? What are your KPIs for them to be able to justify the time they're out doing things? They didn't reply. because they didn't like me challenging them in their own thought process. So, and the reason I bring that up is introductions is one of the coolest things that you can actually measure somebody else and see what they're doing and find out if they're doing the actual things they need to be doing. So let's transition a little bit about how do you actually make that introduction. What do you say? How do you know who to introduce people to that direction?
So I think that's an evolutionary thing for people as well. I think right away, people, when they're looking at that, they're literally thinking about, the business side of things and who can they introduce to do business with. Um, it gets, you have to develop the listening skills, and you really have to understand who's in your network and who they need to be meeting with to be able to make really good introductions. You and I know each other's businesses inside and out. So it's really easy for us when we're talking to someone, say, oh my God, you need to talk to Kevin, or oh my God, you need to talk to Donnie. But if you don't know who your network is, it's really hard to make those introductions.
What do you have going on in your background?
Oh, we have a thunderstorm and I have hail going
Oh,
on
I was
right
like,
now outside my
sounds like you're
house.
tapping on your desk. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
I know I
I'm
just
over
saw
here sending him a
you're
private
posting.
message. I'm over here sending a private message. I'm like, quit tapping, and it's hail.
Yeah, it's hail. I am in a thunderstorm right now. It
Yeah,
started
you are.
literally when we started recording.
That's
It
some
is
big ass
dark
hail too.
outside. Yeah, I can
Nice.
see them hitting the grass outside my lawn, and they're bouncing when they hit. So
That's some big ass hail. Your truck and roof is
I
not going to like
I
that.
I may get a roof out of this. So
So, but yeah, no, I agree that it's an evolutionary process. For me, it's there you go. I had to mute his mic as we were going through this, bitch, because that's just getting loud. But as you're going through this process, I don't think making introductions really comes natural to anybody. I think you have to learn how to make introductions, and even more importantly, you have to learn how to make the right introductions to the right people. And I think for me and Kevin, probably the same. I fucked up a lot of early introductions, not understanding that not everyone is supposed to be a win referral type conversation. Sometimes it's just a good to get to know you. And I think you know early on, I ran into a couple of guys that we made a really cool synergy just by opening a lot of doors for each other, by knowing that if we could increase our circles by getting more badasses and more real people into them, then the opportunity to have more referrals come through was solid and worked a lot better. So we focused more on building our circles and getting to know more and more people because I wanted to be top in mind, when anybody thought about sales training at that point, so I think it's the ability to leverage introductions to keep yourself top of mind. I think for me that's the biggest thing. If I introduce you to somebody, odds are you're going to keep my name around when other options come up. And the second side of the thing in there that really helps me is the idea of having the triggers of what words or phrases or things that I need to be listening for that indicates I could make an introduction for somebody here. And, that's been a learned process as well to understand, hey, if I can't readily think of somebody that this person should meet, then I got to go figure out what's their trigger events or what's those things that they would indicate that I need to get people there. I mean, conversation I had last week, literally the person was moving their business into Canada and was just looking to meet people in Canada. And we've got 3 people launching chapters up there. So it was really easy to make a quick introduction to all those chapter presidents launching and saying, hey, so and so is looking just for introductions for people in Canada so they can find some circles of influence up there. And so, it's the idea of knowing and listening for what are those key phrases and triggers that I can get the person actually to.
yeah, I love getting the people I'm networking with talking about their clients and figuring out how they're meeting them and where they're getting referrals from now and what type of people are giving them referrals. And then I'm constantly just going through my Rolodex internally thinking, who do I know? And waiting for them to say something like, "Oh, I got. Do you know so and so?" And they're like, "No." And it's like, "Oh, I got to introduce you. Here's what they do," and I talk them all up, and then I write it down. But it's really paying attention, listening to what they have going on in their world. That is key. Most people, when they're networking, especially if they're newer in the sales and don't have their questioning game on on par yet, is they're looking for the next question that they can ask as opposed to listening for what the people are actually saying. And that's really important in the networking piece because, those things people can say, are going to be all the clues for who you need to introduce them to. I used to do this exercise with members of another networking organization where I read off this, 1-page sheet of it was just filled with probably easily 100 different cues for potential referrals. And most people, as they're listening it, would get like 20. And it was funny because I do it in groups and everyone would hear different things. And one person would name off their 20. I'm like, all right, cool. Who's got something different? And everyone else's hand would go up because they all heard different things. And at the end of it, we'd go through, all right, so you all missed these. Also, here's another 10 that none of you heard. And it's, that listening piece is such a huge skill. And if you're not doing that in a networking situation, if you're just really hyper focused on hearing one thing, you're going to miss a ton of stuff.
Yeah. Dude, that's fucking smart. I think if people go into any conversation with this idea that I'm going to introduce this person, as long as I fucking like them and they seem like a stand-up person, I'm going to introduce this person to 3 people before this conversation's over. It's going to force you to have to listen to them on a deeper level because you can't make introductions if you don't know who to introduce them to, and go back to the all the questions Kevin asked and like so I think if you start the conversation off with, okay, let's get the relationship to a level that I like them, makes sense that I'd put my name with theirs, and then before the conversation's done, I'm going to make 3 introductions. And what, for me, I've got to make the introductions right then and there. So as I'm talking to somebody and I get who they need to meet, dude, I am pulling up LinkedIn most likely and making a quick introduction there, because if I get off that Zoom call or out of that conversation and I haven't made those introductions, I'm out. Yeah, I'm totally going to forget about introducing these people, and to make those conversations happen. So I think it's a big move to commit to making the introductions and then getting the introductions done while you're having the actual conversation.
Yeah, that's been a huge shift for me as I've just gotten busier with time on target and then with Success Champions. Tomorrow I have meetings back to back the entire morning. And if I'm meeting with people and I say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to introduce you. I totally got this really cool person I want to introduce you to. Here's what they do," and write it down and don't do it, I'm going to forget about it because something else is going to take the priority spot for me. So I'll do it right when I'm on the call. It's a
Mhm.
little harder when you're in person with someone because then you have to pull out your phone. It's like, I'm actually listening, but I'm doing the introduction, and that's still kind of rude. But when you're on the virtual call, it's so super easy. Hey, I'm introducing you right now. Watch your LinkedIn for a post from me,
Yeah.
or watch your Facebook Messenger or email if it's someone I introduce all the time. But that's key. And the nice thing is for the introductions, you can keep it relatively short. You don't have to do the big song and dance introducing each other. It can be a lot easier than when you're actually doing the referral and you want to give a little, information to both parties about who they're about to talk to.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You know, I think, guys, for this episode, it's really about being very purposeful about sitting across from people and making introductions. I think, introductions are very much what keeps you top of mind for other people. And I think the more that you focus on getting people to the right conversations, the right rooms, and the right places, you will grow your business so much better, because once people understand that you can connect people together, you become a more valuable asset in their overall sales game, which is huge, as you're building out. So I think every conversation you go into it, can I make 3 introductions for this individual, and then make sure you can establish trust, and then you start opening doors for them. Listen to those trigger words. Listen to specifically who they need to meet, and if you can't get them to the end client they need to meet, get them to people who can potentially get them to that end client, or become some sort of synergy partnership for them. So, as always, guys, if you found any value in these episodes, one tip, trick, something that you can use in your business, please make sure you're subscribed, leave us a 5-star review, and tell one person about the show, man. Those 3 things are like the trifecta of appreciation for us, and we fucking dig it if you do it. So, as always, love you, mean it. See you, bye.